What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some UFC DFS picks and lineup advice, card best bets, tips, predictions, you name it. UFC Vegas 47, FanDuel, DraftKings, all the sports books out there. We have Jack Hermansson, Sean Strickland. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. Joined after a week away, but we're back with some fights. Owner of MMA DFS.com, Jake the Snake. What's up, Jake?
Not a whole lot, man. How you been?
Good. Just grinding every other sport, and MMA, one of the most profitable sports out there. So I'm glad we get it back on the books this weekend. So what we normally do here, we break down the main event from a DFS and betting perspective. We talk about all of the newcomers making their UFC debuts, what it means for DFS. We give a couple fights that we want to target both sides of in tournaments, and then we give our favorite two bets for a stream parlay of the week. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Get notified when we go live, upload any new videos. Just a heads up, I'm in Vegas next week. There will not be a UFC video next week despite there being a pay-per-view event, but we'll have all the normal content out there for you. Give us a thumbs up if you like the UFC content. Any questions, comment on the video below or hop in our Discord server. We'll be in there tonight, all day, fight day, and through the fights if you want to come sweat it out with us. And again, Super Bowl is next week. Tons of content coming on the channel. So again, make sure you are subscribed. So Jake, let's start with the main event, the only 5-rounder on the card, Sean Strickland, Jack Hermansson. What are your thoughts on the fight, and how does it play out, and how do we attack it both on FanDuel and DraftKings from a DFS perspective?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good matchup, and I think it's great for DFS. So Strickland's actually coming off a record-setting striking performance. He set the record for the most significant strikes ever in a middleweight fight at 186 against Uriah Hall, who generally doesn't absorb that many. So right off the bat, that's a good sign for DFS. Strickland has averaged 7.64 significant strikes landed in his last 4 fights since coming back from that knee injury. And that's actually since he moved up to middleweight as well. He had been fighting at welterweight, so well above his career average of 5.45. So he's just landing a ton of strikes in every fight. Also has a solid 82% takedown defense, which obviously that's going to help out against a grappler and a ground and pound guy in Hermansen. On top of that, Strickland's only been finished once in 27 fights, so super durable guy. And he's been really good about not getting taken down. The only person to take him down in the last 9 fights was Usman, who got him down twice on 8 attempts back in 2017, and that wasn't a welterweight fight. So Hermansen's definitely got his work cut out for him, because the way Hermansen wins this fight is by getting into the ground. I think that Strickland's going to win a striking battle if it stays on the feet. He's actually a sparring partner, Marvin Vettori, who he defeated Hermansen recently in Hermansen's second most recent fight, and that primarily played out on the feet. I think this is a tough one for Hermansen to win. I think he needs to put Strickland on his back. He's not helpless on his back. I mean, he's an okay grappler, but I think that's how Hermansen wins, is he gets Strickland down. He looks for ground and pound, maybe looks for submissions. I think Strickland's going to win the striking battle. So I think it's going to kind of come down to that as to who wins the fight, but I think it looks pretty good for Strickland. I like him to win a decision here. I think we're going to see a ton of striking volume. I think Hermansen's going to go for some takedowns. Maybe he'll land 1, maybe 2. I don't think he's going to land a ton. And I think the winner is going to score well. If Strickland wins the striking battle, we saw it in his last fight, put up a huge score. I think that could happen again here. And if Hermansen gets him down and does find success on the mat, I think that's going to score well too. So I think either guy, whoever wins, they're going to score well. I mean, it's possible we see a finish. I still see it going a little bit longer. Either way, I think it scores well, whether we get a finish or a decision. So I think you want to play one of them in pretty much all of your tournament lineups. And in low risk, you can actually stack them on both sites. FanDuel priced Hermansen down again. So, we're always stacking in low risk pretty much on DraftKings. And lately, you can actually do it on FanDuel as well.
Interesting. Yeah, this is a prototypical fight that we want to stack in low risk contests. We see pros do it all the time. We know it's a profitable strategy. And given the money lines, the fighting styles, and their pricing on both sites, makes it another good decision here as well. So let's move on to some UFC newcomers. Fortunately, it's not like the last slate where Jake, you and I were charting tape for seemingly days with all the newcomers that were on that pay-per-view card. But there are 4 newcomers on this card, which gives us opportunities for the sports books to not adjust as quickly, and for the field potentially in DFS to not play these fighters as heavily. Let's bring up the MMA Occupy model at OccupyFantasy.com. Ranks every fighter, FanDuel, DraftKings, using our proprietary metric, the OF Index. And Jake, I have it sorted right now by DraftKings salary. So we'll go from most expensive to least expensive newcomers. And we have to start with the most expensive fighter on the slate, Gelatin Almeida. Give me the rundown, what he looks like, and his prognosis for DFS.
Yeah, so he's coming off a win on Contender Series and a second round submission. He's 14-2, really explosive grappler. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Rodolfo Vieira, and just the way he just attacks takedowns and potentially his cardio, but we'll see. We don't really know because all of his wins come within 7 minutes, so we haven't seen much of his cardio. But it will be interesting if it goes past that. But this guy is so explosive with his takedowns. I mean, I don't really see it going past that. But 100% finishing rate. He has 5 knockouts, 9 submissions, 10 first round finishes. Like I said, every single win is coming under 7 minutes. He's on a 9-fight winning streak, and he leads the slate in chances for a finish, which, I mean, sometimes when we see a newcomer, and they got the crazy high odds in their favor and leading the slate, you're always a little bit, I would say, hesitant to go all in on that just because we've seen it fail before. But at the same time, I mean, he's going against Daniela Marquez, who's, not good, one-dimensional grappler, and I would say a far less explosive grappler than Almeida. So I think that this is going to be a fight where Almeida just cruises through Marquez, and then in the future we're going to be kind of wondering about Almeida's gas tank and potential Rodolfo Vieira gas out type situation down the road.
Unfortunately, he is not facing the cardio king in Danilo Marquez. So any angle look to be played there is difficult. But again, we've seen this spot fail before. A lot of these newcomers, they look great on tape, and then the bright lights come on, and debuting fighters have a pretty poor record historically. But again, this is a spot that looks pretty good for Almeida, and he looks pretty good as a prospect in general. Next up, we have Dennis Bondar, who was scheduled to make his debut, and we actually charted his tape a long time ago. Finally, he's getting his debut against Malcolm Gordon. Bondar, a massive -285 favorite. Big finishing potential. What do you see with Bondar?
Yeah, so he's another 14-2 guy, another explosive grappler, coming from the Ukraine. Also has a 100% finishing rate, 4 knockouts, 10 submissions, 11 first-round finishes. He's coming on an 8-fight winning streak. He gets an even easier matchup here against Malcolm Gordon, who he's been finished in the first round in 2 of his 3 UFC fights. He's coming off a win against the lesser Figueiredo, but I wouldn't put too much stock into that. Gordon will be desperate for a win here, but Bondar's looked really good, really explosive grappler. You don't see that finishing rate at 125 pounds very often. I mean, this guy has just been putting everyone away. He hasn't necessarily been facing all of the toughest competition throughout his career, but I would say lately, he's faced better guys than Gordon probably. So I think he's a pretty interesting prospect. He's got the second highest finishing chances on the slate, which is pretty interesting. We have 2 UFC newcomers leading the slate in finishing opportunities. I mean, what could go wrong there?
I was just going to say, what could possibly go wrong with that? Oh, man.
Bondar looks great, man. He looks great. The only concern I will say, other than the debut, is he's coming off a 1.5-year layoff because he had 3 fights canceled, 3 UFC debuts canceled. He's finally getting in there.
I mean, debuts, long layoffs, 2 general red flags for DFS and betting, but the matchup may be enough to overcome it here. And moving on, the third fighter making their debut off the Ultimate Fighter. Should have actually fought earlier, but had to withdraw due to injury. Tresean Gore, he'll fight also the Ultimate Fighter participant, Brian Battle. So give me the rundown on Gore.
Yes, I mean, this was the matchup that was supposed to happen back in August before Gore suffered a knee injury. This was supposed to be the finale of the Ultimate Fighter. Instead, Gore dropped out. Battle ended up taking on Urbina, who had lost on the show, actually who had been knocked out by Gore in the second round on the show. So, I mean, Battle still hasn't faced anyone with any actual UFC experience. So while he has one UFC fight under his belt and Gore's making his debut, I would say they still have kind of a similar amount of experience, but Battle has made the walk into the octagon before. So this will just be Gore's 4th pro fight, which is kind of crazy. He only has 3 pro fights and then the 2 Ultimate Fighter fights, which go down as exhibition matches. But he's a good striker. I would say he was probably the most interesting prospect on the show. Just watching it, before the injury. He's not like a great grappler, but he has a good takedown defense, and he's not like completely helpless. So we've seen Battle submit a bunch of guys in the second round. I think he's going to have a tougher time submitting Gore, and I think Gore is going to be the better striker in this fight. But I mean, the concerns are going to be the limited experience, coming off the knee injury, making his UFC debut. But other than that, I like Gore to win the fight. I know the line has moved in Battle's favor, but I still think Gore outlands his way to victory here, and I don't really see this fight going the distance.
All right, that should be an interesting fight. I'm excited to see that one. And then finally, we have Chidi and Jokuwani, who is probably one of the most experienced newcomers we've seen in the UFC. I mean, I guess we have Fialho just a couple of weeks ago. He was pretty experienced as well. And now we get another guy named Jokuwani who did fight on the Contender Series. But what are your thoughts on his style and how it translates to DFS?
I mean, it's funny you bring up Fialho because Chidi actually knocked out Fialho.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's fought like a dozen different guys with UFC experience. It's kind of crazy. His wins over Max Griffin, Alan Jouban, a bunch of other guys. 20-7. He fought in Bellator for 4 years. Then he moved to LFA for one fight. Then he went on Contender Series, which is kind of weird. They even brought him on Contender Series, just like put him in the UFC. But
Right.
I think he was actually supposed to go to the UFC, and then they were like, just go on Contender Series real quick, and then he got a finish on there. I think he looks good, man. He's a really good kickboxer. I think his one concern is he can get tied up along the fence or put on his back. And he claims to be a black belt, but I don't know if I'm buying that, man. Like, he has no grappling off his back.
Dude, the announcer said that in every single fight he was in. I was like, okay, I haven't seen it yet, so.
I haven't seen anything that says he's even like a blue belt. I don't know, man. He's a really good striker, but I haven't seen really any grappling from him. Like, he can put down ground and pound on the mat, but I mean, other than that, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any grappling. So, luckily for him, he's going against another striker. I mean, Barrios had that one fight, 2 fights ago, where he got like 3,000 ground strikes on a Zaitar in the third round, but that wasn't really grappling. That was just Zaitar was exhausted, and Barrios got on top of him, and just for some reason the ref let that go on for like 4 minutes. He must have been playing him in DFS, but I don't really think Barrios is the type of guy to take advantage of Chidi's, weaknesses, but you never know. I mean, you could definitely push him against the fence and just kind of make this fight ugly, but in space, I think Chidi's a really good striker, really good kicks, lots of good feints. Dude's really fast, really powerful. I think it's an interesting matchup, and like you said, man, he's a way more experienced than most guys making their UFC debut. I mean, I think he's going to be a guy to keep an eye on, even if this fight doesn't go his way. Definitely a guy we're going to want to be looking at in his next fight. But I still like him to win this fight, too.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, let's move on here and let's talk about a fight that we want to target in DFS. Whoever wins is likely to score well for your tournament lineups. Jake, which fight are you eyeing the most outside of the main event?
Yeah, so the one that really stands out to me where whoever wins, I think, is going to end up in the winning lineup is going to be the Rowe Witt fight. I think that, all of Witt's fights, basically, every single one so far in the UFC has had a high score. It's either Witt getting knocked out in the first round or him getting a submission or him putting on just a dominating grappling performance. I mean, basically the way he fights, with no chin and just constantly looking for takedowns, it's just, it's a DFS gold mine. And Rowe, 100% finishing rate. I think it's pretty much perfect for DFS. I don't really see how this fight fails.
Famous last words. Curious to see what happens to make this fight fail. So, yeah, I agree. That's definitely a fight you want to target. And again, both sides, obviously not in the same lineup, but get exposure to both of these fighters for your tournaments on FanDuel and DraftKings. All right, Jake, let's close out the show with our stream parlay. I'll start first, and I'll go with the newcomer we just talked about, Chidi, and I'll go for him to win a decision in Jokuwani. I think it's plus 340 to win the decision.
Yeah, man. I really like that bet. We've seen the line move in his favor. He opened as like a plus 135 favorite, and now he's down to like negative 105, and basically a pick 'em. And the prop didn't really move. So I mean, I think the books were kind of sleeping on this one. I think that prop line is too wide. I really like that bet, and since that's we got decent odds there, I'm gonna go with a safe option. Quote unquote safe here. I'm gonna go Bondar inside the distance at negative 105.
All right, cool. So you calculate the odds really quickly. And a point about in Jokuwani, it's a derivative line, right? When the money line moves, then we see all the props and anything related to that generally move a little bit slower. It moves quicker in bigger markets like NFL and NBA, but again, it still moves the slowest. Once the line moves, those have to move secondarily. And it's even slower in niche sports like MMA. So again, if you're grinding out sports bets, that is definitely a market to target these derivative props when a line does move. And again, just so you know, we do have partnerships with sports books in legal states, so make sure you check out the links in the daily plug on occupyfantasy.com for those deposit offers. Jake, what we got for the odds?
Yeah, great point, man. So that's gonna be plus 759 on that parlay.
Cool. Just hit like 5, 6 of those. We'll be back in the black for our stream parlays over the last 2 years. We'll be good to go. So that'll do it for this show. Catch all of Jake's work at MMADFS.com. Breaks down the fights every week from a betting and DFS perspective. Check out his premium work on his Patreon. Extra bets, more rankings, all kinds of stuff, everything you need. Also has the trends guide from 2021. Valuable resource if you're building tournament lineups on FanDuel or DraftKings. Follow him on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Check us out, OccupyFantasy.com. Jake also writes the daily plug for us, which you see on screen here, where he gives us top picks, lineup strategies for all different contest types on FanDuel and DraftKings, and then his favorite bets of the week. Again, all the stuff you have to check out, as well as the Occupy model and our lineup builder. Ranks every fighter, allows you to build up to 150 lineups using optimal lineup criteria. It's the same builder I've used to win a handful of GPPs. So that'll do it for the show. We appreciate you listening. Follow Jake on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Follow me at Brian Jester FF. Follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Make sure you're subscribed, like the video. Any questions, comment on the video, or hop in the Discord server. We're happy to have you. So for Jake, I'm Brian. Good luck this week.